Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great webinar on top of these guys. You should know them by now. So much fun. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for either of our speakers, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have 3 polling questions during the webinar, so hopefully everybody will be engaged with that. And at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Outlook for DevOps plus Agile plus VSM. Don't get left behind in 2021. Or using value stream management, Outlook and key goals for 2021. Our speakers today are Jeff Keyes, who's VP of Product at Plutora, and Helen Beal, who is a strategic advisor at DevOps Institute and Ways of Working coach. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Charlene. It's a pleasure as always. So hello, audience, and lovely to be chatting with Jeff again. So this is our flow today. We will have a Q&A section at the end, but we're also happy to take them during the webinar, so just drop them in the chat box. We're going to be talking about 2021, trying to forecast it in difficult times, shall we say. Looking at some goals in the new normal and then aligning business measurements, and then we'll look at how to use value stream management to measure DevOps improvements, and then we'll look at some definitions of value and how to set value outcome targets towards the end of today. So let's start with thinking with our crystal balls in front of us about what next year might look like. So one way to think about this is to look at what we've learned so far and what has happened to date. So hopefully some of you have seen this Forrester Wave that came out in Q3 around August time this year by Chris Kondo and Christopher Mines and another group of people. And it was slightly different from the Forrester Wave that had come out, what, October 2018? Was that when the first one was, Jeff?
Yep, exactly. And the biggest thing I think that changed is the number of, well, first of all, in the 2018 one, there were no leaders. And now in this year's wave, there are leaders. There's 4. And last time there were some players that you would think would do more and didn't. And this time there's some players that just showed up like ServiceNow out of the blue and poof, they're there. I think the biggest thing for me is sort of the tone of it. When the value stream management new wave, or sorry, the Now Tech and New Tech report came out, rather, it sort of felt like we think this is going to be a thing. You know, it seems like there's a lot of people talking about this, but when this wave came out, it's like, oh yeah, this is on the highway of adoption. People are moving forward with it. They may not know exactly what it is yet, but boy, we know what people are looking for, and it all fits under this umbrella of value stream management.
And I think that's reflected in the quote that we've got here as well, where Forrester's saying that few leaders had heard of VSM in their very first evaluation, so prior to that first wave in 2017. So the noise seems to be getting louder. I'm kind of intrigued, though, on your opinion of why suddenly there were 4 leaders where there were none. Were the criteria changed, or was there serious technological advances in the market? I mean, how did that happen?
I think a combination of things. I think there's some maturing of the solutions from when the first wave came out that frankly, because I went through the criteria for both, being one of the vendors involved, and the criteria before, like, wow, this is really big stuff. And when we did the review for the 2020, it's not like the criteria got easier. In fact, it was more stringent, more requirements, more detailed required, more out of the box and so forth that were required. And so it got harder. I think the thing that happened is people went from like, oh, that's kind of interesting to, oh my gosh, here's the real business problem this is solving. Value stream management all of a sudden looks to address the underpinnings of why do a digital transformation to improve delivery, whether that's velocity, quality, or the actual value delivery and alignment, bringing that together. I think the other things that happened to really accelerate this is some companies were addressing digital transformation as sort of like, yeah, we're going to get to that, and then COVID, right? And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the idea that I could just walk around and see what's happening in organization, that's gone. You're working remotely. The only way you're seeing stuff is if you have systems in place that you can aggregate data through. And then I think between all the shifts that were going on of that and people moving from project to product oriented teams, it's like, poof, we have to have visibility. And I think doubling down on that concept of the acceptance of teams to not have transparency into the development organizations really solidified. Man, why have we put up with this for so long? I get that there's a lot of art and science that goes into developing software, but frankly, that doesn't eliminate the need or ability to have transparency in delivery itself.
So talking of transparency and visibility, gazing into your crystal ball, we had a Forrester wave in 2018, we had one in 2020. Will we have another one in 2021? And if we do, what will that leadership slot look like?
Great question. I think Forrester does their waves about every 18 months, so it may not be 2021, it might be early part of 2022 and how that goes. But when across everything that I see, the amount of inquiries and the amount of interest in value stream management is not slowing down. It's not even plateauing. It's still accelerating. It's still increasing. The number of people that are saying that they want it are still expanding. The market size for it is ever increasing. Some of the background of the Forrester side, which is interesting, and if you haven't gone through some of the Now Tech reports, they're fascinating. There's various segments of where people come from, meaning if you've got the ARA and release automation and release orchestration folks, they're sort of moving upstream, and now I need a management layer. Oh, that's value stream management. They're looking to augment what's on their plate. If you look at some of the, hey, look, there's a big ITSM vendor in here. Who would have ever thought that ServiceNow would be related to anything development organized? That's all operations. Who deals with that? Well, the fact that they're already doing management and in the infrastructure side on the operations, well, of course they're going to look left. Everybody's sort of seeing this need for a control plane above the software delivery factory. Ignore the tools that are down there, but anonymize them, if you will, and make them homogeneous as you bring the data in. Wow, every tool as they go up is going to want a management play on top of what they're doing, and so it's just going to expand.
So that's our forecast. In summary, it's going to expand, but let's have a look at some more research. So exactly in line with what you've just said, Gartner is saying by 2023, 70% of organizations will use value stream management to improve flow in the DevOps pipeline, leading to faster delivery of customer value. And of course, this report quite well. It's from the Future of DevOps tool chains, and you just talked about anonymizing the tool chain effectively. But when Gartner are talking about value stream management there, are they talking about a platform or are they talking about a process?
Well, I think I think they're talking about the combination of both, because just tooling itself doesn't solve problems. The Gartner research is interesting as it relates to value stream management. That actually bifurcates the vendor market. And on one side, you've got value stream delivery platforms, the all-in-one, meaning it's the people that have tools that are trying to do everything to provide stuff. Digital AI, GitLab to Azure DevOps, it's everything. And oh, by the way, there's a management layer on top. And then Gartner segregated it out and said, look, there's not only a delivery platform, but there's a management platform. And the intent of the management platform is to be exactly that control layer that sits above everything that's going on, providing that visibility. In order to have that transparency and visibility, teams have to adopt. They have to culturally accept, hey, I'm going to be transparent in what I do. I can no longer just sort of hide my silo, wait till information's pried from my, cold dead fingers, and enable that to be out there. The culture then has to be open to these smaller teams being more agile, willing to take risks, take bets, set goals, prove what works, what doesn't, use that to then double down on the things that are making faster delivery, more quality delivery, improving delivery of customer value. That's the point. What I love is all of this validates the idea that, at the end of the day, software is eating the world, and we have to deliver value better than we've done before. It's back to the analogy, if fintech was doing its job, companies like Venmo and PayPal probably would never have existed. It would have been just another Bank of America or Wells Fargo or pick your bank here that could have pulled that off. We live in a world now where I know I've said this in the past, but who would ever thought we live in a world where a differentiating feature of an automobile is its software? It's mind-boggling, but yet here we are. It's amazing. We have to recognize that the better that we can deliver software, the better that we deliver value to our customers.
Indeed. Let's have another look at another one then. Let's look at EMA here. So they're talking about how value stream management is a market which large enterprises had massive expectations back in 2018 Q2, and apparently vendors are or appear to be delivering against these expectations. They're seeing 50% growth in penetration expected to occur in 2020 and another 20+% growth in 2021. Interestingly, in this report, though, I'd like to pull out the comments about internally developed solutions and Excel. What are your thoughts on what organizations are trying to do around value stream management themselves?
Well, what I always hear is there's some, my thoughts are, is if you ask the question, how many value stream management solutions do you have? You'll hear a common answer is, we could probably have 3 or 4. And they're not wrong, because what they're trying to do is to tell you the story of how they're gaining visibility into their solutions. So in some cases, they'll have an all-in-one value stream delivery platform. They get some metrics out of that. Some they have a whole, the vast multitude that they're dealing with are individual teams that they reach out to on a regular basis to go aggregate data. And guess where they're aggregating data? Excel. There are teams, in fact, I've talked to quite a number of teams that are building their own solutions, building their own data warehouse to try to organize and collaborate, correlate this data together to create the metrics of delivery that they're looking for. And finally, there's even a bunch of teams that are using open source projects like Hygia as a starting point, just to say, well, man, I know I've got a bunch of CI pipelines. Let me just hook up Hygia and off I go to the races. As they go forward, they start realizing these vendor provided solutions are much broader and offer a way to start to unify that. And that's where we find ourselves today. I think the vast bit of the market is starting to tinker with a lot of these different value stream management solutions to unify the tool chain, to look at the way that software is being delivered from beginning to end. These solutions are evolving, they're maturing, the kinds of metrics that they're delivering and the value and the systems that they're integrating, the breadth that they're involved in is already having an impact, and that impact is now cycling in to say, well, let's hook up more systems, let's deepen the investment there, and the vendor solutions are also deepening. What I love about what you're showing here is like, man, boom, boom, boom. You got Forrester, you got Gartner, here's EMA. I know we have another one that we'll look at. It's like, wow, all these people are talking about value stream management as a category and a segment. This is the birth of a new category that's now been around for a couple of years. And again, kudos to Chris Kondo at Forrester for coining the term value stream management as it relates to software, because it's taken off. When I was at the last DevOps Enterprise Summit, it was fun to kind of walk around and at a DevOps conference and count the booths going, well, which ones of these talk about value streams? Oh, there's one, there's another. It was like really prevalent. Amazing how that is.
That was a great conference. Yes, the 2021 forecast, as you were just saying a few moments ago, this and which resonates with the final statement here, EMA's expectation is that as commercial solutions continue to evolve, as you described, they will become the only scalable way to address VSM needs. So as you said, another one here, actually we've got a couple more. So from Research and Action, from Evelyn Orlick, value stream management is a must do, not a nice to do. So increasing the velocity and quality of software delivery are not the only goals. Business teams and product owners are looking for what are the returns on investment and how they are delighting customers. So for me, I think we actually met at the conference that you were talking to. For me, this is like the final kind of boundary, if you like, or frontier of DevOps. This is where DevOps has been leading this whole time, is actually to get us end-to-end feedback from the customers that we can feed straight back into the DevOps cycle. I think you're on the same page. Do you have anything to add to that, though?
I am absolutely on the same page. I pity the transformations, the DevOps adoptions, the tool adoptions that lack the one-word metrics. You know, for those organizations that have gone down the path of pitching and pitching to management that they want to buy a new tool and that they're going to do all these great things, and then they do a bunch of great things, and when they're asked the question, well, how much better is it? And you got nothing. I mean, what a sad day that is for the billions that have been spent in transformation and tooling and time and culture. To not have something that you can point to and say, wow, that was better and I can prove it to you. That's the whole point. And you know, once you start to think in that mindset of I want to show how much better we are, it gets this mindset of continuous improvement. Well, if I'm going to do that once, why not always be doing that? Let's try lots of little experiments and make this happen all the time.
Yeah.
Everything's got to focus on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. And I think 2021 then is less about Agile, less about DevOps, less about CI/CD tool chains, and more about the customer and the value that the customer is receiving and how to get that value to them. This is our last one in this section from the State of Agile report, having just talked about less Agile. And in this year's report, the 14th one, they did ask some questions about DevOps and value stream management. So you can see there that 78% said they were either expanding implementation of value stream management, implementing but not expanding, or currently implementing, planning to implement, or interested. So 78% of organizations or respondents from organizations have their toes in the value stream management water to a greater or lesser extent. Is that kind of what you would think as well? Or well, what do we need to do to get to 100? Can we anticipate getting to 100%?
Absolutely. What's fun about it is, you know, Agile's been around for 20 years. And I know there's different reports stating different numbers. I know this report has a higher adoption. If I look at the Gartner numbers, across all development, meaning not just does your company do Agile, but across all development, the numbers are after 20 years that still only 50% of development is done even just using some flavor of Agile. You know, DevOps in 10 years is, you know, finally hit the 50% mark. The point is that if you combine DevOps and Agile practices and movement in that direction, and you put a control layer above it, that's value stream management. Doesn't matter where you are in the journey, value stream management's goal is to help accelerate and improve that flow. Why would that not apply to every pipeline? And it does. So I would expect, you know, those forward-thinking teams to be working on adopting it first because they got something to prove. We're going to do it better. And especially the Agile teams, but frankly, in the next 5 years, I would expect a massive adoption of value stream management across every methodology.
Let's see what the audience thinks. Charlene, can you help us out here?
Yeah, absolutely. Going to go ahead and launch our first polling question. Should be on your screen now. The question is, where are you with your adoption of value stream management technology? You can choose from only just heard about it, we built our own, we are thinking about it, we are piloting it, or we are using it. Go ahead and make your selection. And while the audience is making their choice, I do want to just quickly remind folks that You do not have to wait for the question and answer period. If you have a question for Jeff or Helen, please go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question at any time. And we will try to get to as many as we can during the webinar. Okay, I'm going to give folks about say 5 or 10 more seconds to go ahead and make their choice, and then we'll close out the poll and take a look at the results. All right, folks. All right, I'm going to shut it down here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here are the results. Looks like the majority of folks have only just heard about value stream management. So Jeff and Helen, you guys have your work cut out for you.
Well, my initial comment here, Helen, and you tell me if you see differently, but when most people asked, oh yeah, we're all over value stream management. It's hot. We are really working on it. And then you ask the follow-on question, well, what is it? I don't know, crickets, right? It's like, it sounds cool. Sure sounds like something I should know about. So, if you're just only hearing about it, you're just starting to think about it, you're not alone. We're at the beginning phases of this from my perspective, and there's a lot more happening here. Know though that like the EMA report points out, across 19 categories, value stream management was the second fastest growing space. More people say they're adopting value stream management practices and tools and organizational kind of culture things than any other segment. So what's your thoughts, Helen?
I think there is a natural kind of, I was talking about this actually in the context of assessing people's DevOps capability earlier on and with another team. And I think there is a natural kind of defensiveness, like you just said, of people kind of going, yeah, we know about that. So it's interesting that I think we've got some, the audience that we've got today have been very open. I think perhaps they're not being analysed as an organisation. It's easier to be more frank. I'm not sure, but I wanted to, hopefully you can see my screen again. I did actually run this poll sneakily earlier on Twitter as well. So it's kind of interesting seeing the slightly different answers. I only had like 6 answers here, and I was only allowed to put on Twitter, you can only put 4 options, but we've definitely got some way to go to get to here, right? This is where we want to be, where we've got 100% of people using it, right? That's what we just said a minute ago. But we can, this is, as you said, emerging. So we're going to see trends changing over time as we do our jobs, Jeff, you and I, to educate the market and get everyone working on this. So let's talk about some goals in the new normal then. So again, from Evelyn's research, the top 5 goals for value stream management. So in terms of helping people understand why they might want to spend the time, effort, energy, and money investing in value stream management, here are some ideas. So the top answer for the respondents was they want to provide metrics which show business value. Then the next one, the understanding of costs across the value chain. The third one, understanding of time required for the entire flow through. So essentially cycle time from idea to value realization. Fourth, managing the risks across the different value stream. And then fifth one, AI capabilities to help understand patterns and trends. And I assume give insights. The one I really want to pin down on this one though, Jeff, is the risk one, because we haven't really talked about this yet. But how can value stream management help industries, particularly highly regulated, ensure that governance is not compromised for speed?
Well, that is, I think that's actually one of the differentiators of the value stream management platforms, delivery platforms and value stream management platforms in the industry today. If you, a bit of background, I'll get to answering your question. So many people are on a DevOps journey, and when they think DevOps, the first thing they do is run out and go implement a continuous integration tool and start down that path. Of course, then they run into problems with environments and testing and so forth. But assuming they work that out, they run into the next wall, which is the culture and the lack of a better word and lack of a villain to put to the path. It's the cab, right? Hey, we ran into the cab. Cab says no. So, throw up your hands. Or as one of the very first customers I talked to some 2.5 years ago. He said, and I quote, "We've been doing DevOps for 18 months. We haven't shipped anything on those pipelines." And of course, my mind was blown. It's like, wait a minute, I think we're missing how DevOps works. But I had to get into his perspective more to understand where he was coming from. And where they're coming from is they're super highly regulated, how they're going to verify that things happen. There's amount of release tax that they needed to go through in their current culture, and wanted to verify how that was going. What's cool about value stream management solutions now is that governance is very much a part of the equation. It's not just the metrics, but a way to verify that the pipelines themselves include the required checks, have the right level of quality, have a audit and traceability for how the pipeline works. Hey, did the right people double check your aspects of the pipeline? There's a bunch of stuff that happens in every pipeline in highly regulated environments that probably ain't ever gonna be automated. Who's gonna do the threat model? That's not gonna happen in an automated fashion. Do you still need it? Yeah, you do, because if you don't, in some cases, like, you could be held not just some cases there's like criminal liabilities, right, for not doing the right things. And so where value stream management tools come in is to help with manual and automated checks against these pipelines to make sure that the right things are happening. A customer that Helen, you and I have met with a number of times, I know he talks about setting up a new kind of pipeline so that those teams that have already gone through the scrutiny, already made the advances, have hooked into the value stream management solution, in that case Plutora, and have those pipelines acknowledge that they're already the double checks in place. They're on a different path to production, and they go faster.
Absolutely. Yeah, so they've effectively automated a lot of their release checklists, so they have lighter levels of governance, so they can skip some of the CAB steps and go faster, like you said. Let's have another poll. Charlene, please.
Okay, great. Here comes the next polling question. Should be on your screen now. What is your top goal for value stream management in 2021? You can select from accelerate flow, stabilize systems, optimize DevOps evolution, measure PBI value realization, or continuous improvement. Go ahead and make your choice. And again, while folks are making their choice, I do want to let everybody know that this is the first webinar in a 4-part series. The series is how to supercharge DevOps and Agile in 2021. So the next in the series is going to be happening November 18th, and we'll cover, do you need release management in a DevOps world? So folks, watch your email inbox for the invitation. But did want to let folks know about that, and I believe most folks have gone ahead and made their decision. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the polling question here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here are the results. Looks like the majority of folks are looking for optimized DevOps evolution for their value stream management goal in 2021. This is kind of interesting, I think, because it's very, very close behind, or close with continuous improvement, which was very close second. So, but that kind of makes a whole lot of sense. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I mean, both of those are kind of similar, which was kind of part of the trick question, right? So if you're adopting DevOps, what you're trying to do is improve the way you operate. So it's interesting that we've got almost equitable answers there. Like you said, one of my observations on these answers, though, is in the research in action goals we were just looking at, the top thing that people were looking at was the basically realizing value. So that fourth one we've got there, which is, and maybe we threw people off a little bit with the acronym PBI, just product backlog item, but that's the lowest on this research when it was the highest on the last one. But I think this is probably a symptom or indicative of this being an emergent market as well, where we're just, it's almost like a new vocabulary, a new conversation that we have. So almost every group of people, I imagine we ask these questions with, we're going to get different sets of answers whilst we continue doing our work, Jeff, in terms of figuring out what this market looks like and helping people to talk about it more.
Well, and what's really fun is, hey, I'm a vendor for value stream management, and if you ask me what do I bring to the table, all of the above. And yes, you need these things. You need a system for continuous improvement. You need to measure and improve your DevOps evolution, because that journey, it's never ending. You always want to improve it, and then everything else sort of fits in line. Very much so. It's sort of like, well, what have we been doing before this? why is it now, why is now the time that we want to optimize our DevOps evolution? I thought we were already doing that. Why is it now we're looking for continuous improvement and a system for that? I thought we're already doing that. And those are kind of the comments that I hear.
And I think those are obviously valid points. We've been doing this for ages, but you made the comment quite a bit earlier on that a lot of people embark on DevOps journeys and try and do DevOps evolution with a lack of metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And they only discover that down the line, particularly when leaders are going, well, what's actually happened during, all this noise, all this chatter, all this spend, what's it actually resulted in? And people lack the metrics. I think this is where value stream management really steps in. I've got on my screen now, again, I run this one sneakily on Twitter also earlier on today. And interestingly, my comment just now about the research in action coming up with the value realized, actually, when I ran it on Twitter, that one came highest earlier. Don't know whether you've got any comments on that at all, Jeff.
Well, you and I joke about this all the time, Helen. It's like, how do you show that a development team or a product team is actually delivering value? And as dumb as it sounds, the most common answers are they didn't blow up production. Let's look at basically how many keystrokes they pressed. What? When did that become the norm? Why are we not looking at actual value delivered and look at what that means?
So some stuff like this, perhaps we could be looking at. So which one of these would you pick out as the most useful goal for a DevOps team? Or how much I dislike that term, but a team practicing DevOps principles. Which one of these do you think is most interesting?
I love the improved quality and frankly the velocity. So the top two are commonly the most common that I hear. While hey, going faster and it's better quality, didn't blow up production, that still speaks to what I just said. Coming back and saying, look, did we achieve what we accomplished? Does it have to be a really big feature to hit on the mark? Looking at adoption rates of most software, I used to work on the Microsoft Office product, and we were looking at adoption rates of different features and came to the numbers, and I'm going to get these wrong because this was a lot of years ago, but it was in the ballpark of most people were using around 20% of the features. There was probably 25% of the features that were never used ever and were still being maintained. And if we just look at the velocity and did we blow up production, or did we create some catastrophic event, is that really the most valuable? The more we can focus in on delivering the right solutions that actually help the value delivery, that really ought to be the most important. But yet people just assume, hey, I can't really measure what's most important. I can't really figure out correlate revenue or NPS or customer sat to what's going on. So I'll just assume that those product guys got it figured out. And so just show me metrics around quality and velocity instead.
Yeah, I'm going to be like a broken record and say that my favorite on here is obviously measured outcomes of business value, closely followed by compliance and auditability. Actually, I think one of the things we don't talk about enough is how much time technology saves people in terms of automating audits.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of people I've met that in the field that are about to embark on a 2-week, 4-week program where they're having to pull data and compile reports for auditors that could just be instantly available if they just put the right tools in place. And the better integration of end-to-end toolchain, I kind of like that one, but I feel like it's hiding something. And what it's hiding is the ability to measure flow and cycle time, which we haven't really got on here so much. And I think there's two elements for me of value stream management. One is about accelerating the flow of value, and one is about the measurability of that value as it pops out the other end. So that brings us into aligning business measurement section. So Jeff, tell us what we're learning here. This is a different Gartner report about analysing value stream metrics in order to optimise DevOps delivery. So in order to accelerate that flow time that I was just talking about, what are we seeing here?
Well, if you haven't read this report, it's brilliant. It is to say, look, you need to look at business-oriented metrics versus, did I blow up production? You need to enable transparency into pipelines so that you can see what's going on in every pipeline. It's sort of related to the idea that value stream management will drive DevOps adoption, because it will. Because without that, without those metrics, it's going to be really hard to see what's going on. What I love about this report too is it raises or puts a spotlight on the rise of the product management organization in large enterprises, as well as truly the abilities for business stakeholders to have a catwalk above the factory floor. And that, those have both been sort of like, well, everyone will say, oh yeah, we've had product management in large enterprise. Well, we've sort of had product owners, but product management in terms of how native cloud companies see product management as many CEOs of product lines with 2 pizza teams, go party, go make features happen, improve your adoption, and that world is what's changing. It still reminds me way back early on in my career when I got some advice as a programmer of, don't go work for a big company because they don't, big company doesn't realize that software is the business. Software is not really the product there. Whereas in a small startup, software is the product and product management rules. Your little team will be able to go do all sorts of stuff. Well, that's changing now. Software's eating the world. And same on the business stakeholder side of being able to use data to make real world decisions about how the business is doing and about what kinds of solutions should be offered and how to differentiate.
Is that me or Jeff?
Differentiate between what car do I want to buy because of this. I think you're back though.
It was me.
You're seeing a lot of this too, though, Helen. I mean, you see lots of reports. How do you react to this?
My favorite bit of this slide is under business stakeholders having data-driven decision making, because from my experience, what you were just talking about, when technology teams are treated as order takers, when they're a cost center, they are driven by opinion from the business, the kind of feeling from the stakeholders of what they'd like to see. But what we're seeing here is actually the opportunity to have conversations about real activity based on the data. So that's exciting stuff, I think. Shall we have another poll?
Absolutely.
Charlene.
I'm here. What metrics do you currently use to measure business or customer value? My mute button would not unmute me for some reason. I don't know if the technology is trying to tell me something. I don't know. But anyway, you could choose from profit revenue, net promoter score, referrals, reviews, customer journey time, session time, bounce rate, or basket size. Go ahead and make your selection. And just one more quick reminder that if you have a question for Helen or for Jeff, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel. You can put it in anytime. We hopefully will have enough time for question and answer period. I expect we will, but please, at any time during the presentation, you are able to go ahead and put your question in via the GoToWebinar control panel. All right, give folks a couple more seconds here to make their selection, and then we'll close it out and take a look at the final results for this polling question. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and close it down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, what metrics do you currently use to measure business or customer value? Profit revenue is the big winner here. What do you guys think?
Not a huge surprise. Jeff, would you like to start some commentary on this one?
Yes, my biggest comment is when you ask this question, you say, what should we be using versus what do we currently use? I don't commonly see the systems until we come in that actually measure this. So yes, but I would bet that if you were to look at the majority of the pipelines in most organizations, they don't actually correlate this way. This ends up being a yeah, this is what we should be doing versus what's actually there.
I think it's also kind of the kind of obvious answer. I think it's where we start from, but it is an interesting one because one of the things I've increasingly seen is the desire for teams as they become autonomous to effectively manage their own P&L, so their own profit and loss. So understanding their monthly costs in terms of people, utilities from, you know, like cloud infrastructure, tool chain, subscription services, training, staff hiring, bonuses, all of those kind of costs being understood versus what their actual product or service is bringing in, I think is increasingly important. I think that's kind of like the ultimate goal, but there are so many other ways to measure value. And as you know, Jeff, I spend quite a lot of time talking about what is value and talking about it with other people. But one of the things that I've learned this year is the phrase that value is in the eye of the beholder. So it's really very interesting talking more with different types of customers in different types of industries about things that matter to them. And I put Net Promoter Score together with referrals here because Net Promoter Score is quite widely used, particularly in sort of consumer industries, but it's perhaps not as good in B2B. And there are some people that are kind of dismissing it a bit and actually saying it's kind of not quite a vanity metric, but it doesn't really show, it's a proxy metric, but it doesn't actually show you a direct business impact, whereas of course referrals will, and reviews effectively have the same impact as referrals. But taking a look at that, 43% profit revenue, 21% NPS referrals reviews, 11% customer journey time, 17% on the more technical ones, by the way, that we would pick up on our APM, AIOps and observability tools, and then basket size, which is really for retail sector only. Let's have a look at how we did on Twitter with that, because that's quite interesting, again, seeing the difference, because on Twitter, I got a much stronger answer rate on the NPS and referrals and reviews. Do you think I have a different audience on Twitter, or is it just to do with the sample size, or do you think does it show a higher level of capability to use different metrics? What do you think?
Well, I think during the course of this discussion, we've been talking for about 40 minutes now about value stream management, some of the goals, intent. I think as you start to build the story, it becomes really obvious. So like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be looking at you know, how many keystrokes the developers press or how many story points. While interesting and is an aspect of it, it's not really telling me if I'm delivering value to my customers, which is what the point of value stream management is. So I think we sort of taint people in a survey to say, look, just from a blank question out in the wild, I think if you were to ask, well, in fact, Forrester did, well, they have a survey about, you know, how do you measure success? And if I remember right, like the most common answer was, in essence, we didn't blow up production, escaping defects or something like that. Boy, really?
Yeah, let's talk about that in some more detail then, talking about DevOps improvements then. So some of the stuff also out of Gartner here, talking about value stream management and flow analytics together. So some strengths of that combination: we've got improved end-to-end visibility, we've got those wonderful, one of my favorite things, the data-driven conversations. So people can't just come into a room with and say they've got an opinion and assume everyone's going to think they're right. Constraint-focused improvements and collaborative ownership. Then we've got some weaknesses on the other side. So lack of metric standardization, limited guidance, narrow integration, and potential for misuse. How do you respond to those weaknesses in the context of an organization trying to measure their DevOps improvement?
Well, and these are the, so let's talk about what they are just for a second too. Limited guidance. A company's been told, for example, over and over, and here we are on DevOps.com, deploy more frequently. Yes, in general, that's the right answer. I'm sure you and I can talk about some cases where maybe, I don't know, maybe we don't, maybe we slow that down depending upon the kind of system it is, and the amount of automation or the amount of reinvention that particular pipeline will need. The narrow integration, oftentimes a value stream management solution will come out of the space of a single tool, whether it be release orchestration or just the planning side, and assuming that if I've got planning data, well, I can see everything. It's not real. You need to look at your, as you've been pointing out, Helen, your cycle time and your lead time is really from idea all the way into production. Where those two combined get misused then is to go prove some point of why I need to just automate one section or eliminate governance for one piece without acknowledging how that's really going to fit together, which is again made worse by, if you're not standardizing your metrics. What is your cycle time? If I look at it just from a DevOps perspective versus an actual value stream perspective, cycle time's the same word, but they mean two completely different things depending upon how broadly across the pipeline I'm looking. So there's a bit here to look at. But all in all, if you come back to the core goal of I want to look at the value stream metrics from end to end, you're going to get to some good answers. You'll make the right decisions about where your bottlenecks are and how to improve.
Yeah, and you know how much fun I have with the whole lead time, cycle time metric when I draw like where it could start from, and you could start it from the idea, portfolio management, product backlog, sprint backlog, development started, code committed.
Right.
Then where do you end it? Do you end it when it goes into production, or do you end it a week later when you've done some analysis, or do you end it a month later, or when it hits its target in the experiment? There's like all these different lines you can play with, and maybe one day we'll have a tool that allows us to just kind of fiddle with those different lines. But back to where we're at, because we are running out of time. Definitions of value then, and setting value outcome targets. So I really love this because I don't think there is enough conversation or differentiation in the market between the different types of value. And Jeff Goltheth here talks about business value, customer value, and organizational value. And for me, that brings a lot of clarity to what we're talking about. I think technology teams have often been treated as a cost center, the order taker. The organization hasn't seen technology as strategic until they realize that software is eating the world. And when we've talked about value, we've been talking more about the business value rather than the customer value. And everything we learn in Lean, and therefore DevOps, really tells us that if we can please the customer, everything else falls into place, right? Which I think is true. I can be flippant, but I do think if you focus on pleasing the customer, everything else comes with it.
Yeah, it really does. And I like how this is laid out too. There's a lot to think about, a lot to talk about here.
But perhaps we don't have time today. So let's break this down a little bit more into business value and customer value. So we've talked about quite a lot of this already. We did have to cut some of the options out for the amount of answer options that we can manage in both GoToWebinar and Twitter. But there's all these business values we can look at. Profit and loss, we talked about revenue, basket size, the reviews we get, the net promoter score, the amount of referrals. We haven't really talked about churn and adoption here. So this is about the amount of customer churn we get, so how many we lose versus how many we acquire and retain. This is one of your favorites, I think, Jeff. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that one?
It is, frankly, the whole goal of many a product team will say, well, what's the adoption rate of a particular feature? What's my customer sat score with it, as it will fill into an NPS? What's my churn rate? And looking at the relationship between the two is rather interesting. You would hope if you're delivering good value over time, people are staying with you and adopting more and more of your feature set, especially in a product-driven growth kind of mentality where the product is driving the adoption of the software product is driving the adoption of features and sales. It's really where it ought to be. Ultimately, it's a really easy measurement to acquire. Most tools out there there's a number of tools out there that allow you to pull that data in.
And the tools that help us with these metrics are particularly interesting. I spent some time earlier on today brokering discussion between an observability vendor and 3 expert SREs, site reliability engineers. And what was so interesting about those, we were talking very much on the customer value side of this table. And what's so interesting, I thought, is when we talk often about observability and site reliability engineering, we end up thinking that we're talking about incident management, downtime, all those things that you were just talking about, that kind of obvious techie metric. But actually what the SREs were saying is what they only really care about is user experience. That's all they want to know about, is what the customer is experiencing as they interact with the site, and not just whether the site is up or down or slow or fast, but how long and how long their journey takes, and whether they have the outcome in their journey that they want. So if they're trying to book a hotel room, it's quick to find the right one and quick to get it booked in. And this is where we kind of move from marketing into tech, because we can also then start talking about these proxies of quite technical data around things like session length and bounce rates and conversion rates that can tell us a lot about what is going on that we might not realize. So as one of the SREs, Dinesh, was putting it, the kind of unknown unknowns that can help us forecast when a customer is going to experience a problem and they're not going to get the value they were seeking. So thinking about this and wrapping up, because we need to have a little bit of time for some questions. This concept of the value cycle then, we've got this, we start with idea in the portfolio and backlog, so we're setting vision and goals and getting ideas in there. Then we're creating code and integrating it, and then part of that is about testing it and then delivering it, and then we get insights and analysis. So we spent quite a lot of time talking about this, Jeff, but let's talk through where people might think about what value they are going to get from a product and how they would use a value stream management tool to help them during their cadence, their development and delivery cadence to do this work around focus on actual value. I've got some suggestions here. Do you want to talk away?
Yes. I know that what most people lack is visibility across the entirety of the pipeline, frankly. And when I talk about that, I don't mean that, the things in Jira and now it's marked as done. What I really mean by that is being able to see all along the journey from idea to production, and that insight and where things are, what environment does it live on, what release train is it going to go out on, and so forth is really critical. And being able to correlate that back to the portfolio in the backlog, being able to see the artifacts that are produced as part of the development process, what's the test quality, really what's lacking here in this values, what the value cycle addresses is the ability to bring all this data together and continuously improve, so that you can look at the metrics of how are we doing on our backlog, how much work in progress do we have, how much is flowing through from a continuous integration point of view, how's our journey of continuous test and the related environments that have to get spun up and spun down related to it, how's our automation for moving code into deployment, into environments itself, and that process of deployment, and these insights and analysis really help us as we look at the overall process to find the bottlenecks and where we need to improve, and then correlate that data, frankly, with the value being delivered, whether that be customer sat, adoption, correlate it to churn rates and so forth. That's what's interesting. We delivered a piece of software. Did the adoption go up? How can I bring it together? Yeah, well, see, now here's where I'm gonna have a more distinct opinion too, because guess what? I'm a value stream management vendor. What I bring to the table is a cloud-based solution to help you do exactly this. The way to think of any value stream management solution is frankly, first and foremost, it's going to aggregate data across the value stream from all aspects, from planning to operations. And it's not just ingesting data, but it's correlating data. It's normalizing that data so that you can speak a common language from planning to what's happening into operations. Converging the tool chain so that the data flows bidirectionally, so that if you end up with a service desk ticket, it can then in essence create a defect and you can watch data flow back and forth. I think we talked about another example too, where some requirements from a pipeline can get pushed back into code to be tasks that are completed by the development team. Whether they're automated or manual, who cares? It doesn't really matter. Do the right thing for whatever that particular code is. What's cool about the Plutora platform is the next two layers, frankly, because anybody can integrate data. That's not the critical problem. The critical problem is the management orchestration and then the analytics that come on top of it. Our solution offers really a management workflow around the release pipeline and managing risk, around the environments themselves that help you in the provisioning, however far you are in that journey of manual and automated tasks, and the transitioning the go live, the big event, the game day event, if you will, the go live weekends, so that you can move on a journey of making that more and more automated. And all that rolls into an analytics platform to help you have deep analytics and comparative metrics, help you have real-time collaboration across these different pipelines, and the oversight and the audit, so that audit is no longer an event. It's a it doesn't matter kind of thing. Here's your audit that everything happened, because you have interrogation in the pipelines. Value stream management platforms give you the transparency and visibility into every pipeline. This is, for example, a set of DevOps metrics for a particular pipeline over time. You can watch your journey go forward as you improve. Whatever that journey is and whatever area of your pipeline you want to improve, this is just DevOps. We could look at the cycle time of the overall and the value stream metrics. But with that, well, let's move on to any questions we have, because we're running out of time.
Yes, we are. And in fact, I think we only have time for maybe one question. So let's go ahead and just dive right on in, and let's see. How can you balance not over documenting a complex set of development tool use and resource use versus generating impactful metrics?
Well, I'll take a swing at that one. And then Helen, I'd love to get your thoughts too. The point of value stream management isn't a documentation exercise. It is let's connect the tool chain and unify and converge our tool chain. That's always going to be a real-time thing. So the fact that for a pipeline, I've got Jira talking and working with artifacts that are pushed to artifact repository, and maybe there's Jenkins, and then there's a series of test tools, maybe whatever those tools are, and ultimately pushing data into ServiceNow, for example. Great. There's no need to do more in terms of the documentation other than to have that data correlated and standardized into a value stream management platform. Now with the data there, you have complete visibility to say, okay, I got a new feature that was created over in Jira. Awesome. Let's watch it flow through the system. I don't need to document anything more about it. I can just look at my flow time as it's going to flow from stage to stage or from environment to environment, and start using that to predict things like how long do features take? How can I improve? Where are my bottlenecks? What are the breakdown of the kinds of issues that we're pushing into production? How many of those are going to be ones that actually provide business value versus infrastructure or otherwise?
Yeah, Agile value. We value working software over comprehensive documentation, comprehensive being the key word there, and we work in an incremental manner. So we work on small features, and I often think and work with people and figure out that actually a well-written user story and unit test is probably sufficient documentation for its purpose, which is enough for someone picking up the object to figure out what it is and how it works. I think, with value stream management, the objective is to accelerate the flow of value and ensure that we're making the right decisions about the next thing to do, because we understand the value that's been realized. So it's not about documentation, it's about data, which I think is what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, guys, we're 1 minute to the top of the hour, so that's all the time we have for question and answer period. But please know, if we didn't get to your question, the folks at Plutora are getting a copy of all the questions, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to follow up with you offline. Quick reminder that today's event has been recorded, so after today's webinar, you will be receiving an email to access the webinar on demand if you want to watch it again. You will also be able to find it on the DevOps.com website. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Real quick, want to do the drawing for the $425 Amazon gift cards. We're going to do this at lightning speed, folks. So today's winners are Christine N, Jackie W, Matthew M, and Brian J. Congratulations to all 4 of you. Jeff and Helen, thank you so much for a great presentation as always. And thanks also to the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.